Jeff Ireland went into detail about why Winston and all of that going on. This was probably the most pointed, punchy comment, though, that Ireland made in the whole interview.
It's a compliment to Jameis Winston too, to understand where he's at in this world and sign a one-year deal here and learn behind Drew. There's no better teacher. If Drew never said a word to him, he would observe more than he'll ever learn in football just by learning how Drew does things. He's an incredible leader. He's an incredible studier of the game, how he breaks down his opponent, and then you throw in Pete Carmichael, Joe Lombardi, and Sean Payton on the offensive side of the ball, and those creative minds. Jameis Winston he'll learn more football in a year than he has in his lifetime.
Oh. Jameis Winston will learn more football in a year than he has in his lifetime. That's telling. You could certainly flip that around and say, well, what's happened to some of the other backups? But neither here nor there. You're talking about an elite talent, and the idea clearly, when you have a guy with that type of physical ability to come in and learn, the hope is that a year from now, you're having a conversation with him about a long-term deal, potentially. Ireland did go into detail about the plan with the three quarterbacks. Again, not including Tommy Stevens, the draft pick. We're talking about Breeze, Hill, and Winston.
Well, it really probably won't be too much different than last year. I mean, what we love about Taysom is his ability to do all these different jobs, and he does them at a really high level. He can play on special teams. He's blocked 2 or 3 kicks for us. He's our personal protector on the punt. He's a tight end. He's an F tight end. He's played fullback. He's played running back. He's played quarterback. If we don't have a solid number 2 quarterback, then he can't do all those things. If he becomes the number 2, then, we're not going to have him do all those things, because what if he snaps a finger? That kind of takes away that flexibility. So we know we feel like he can start in the league at some point when it's his turn, and that's obviously why we invested in him. But we also need a number 2 to really utilize his skill set and his upside to the full extent of his ability.
You'll know what I'm going to say, right? On one hand, you have the Saints brass telling you, we believe Taysom Hill can be a starter in the league. And on the other hand, they're telling you, we like him way better in this slash role, which is why we have to have another quarterback in case if there's a problem. I mean, that tells you, in essence, what you need to know. And I get pushback at times from people who are Taysom Hill fans, but I got to reiterate, I feel like I have to reiterate, I'm a Taysom Hill fan too. I think the guy's fantastic. He's so much fun to watch. Great team guy. He's completely bought in. He makes the Saints better and is helping them win. But the bottom line is the guy's thrown 14 career passes. Are you really, truly convinced that he can be the guy to lead the offense? And the answer is no. And it's not to say he never will or never can or couldn't possibly. But if you're the New Orleans Saints, you have to hedge that bet. I mean, that's why you brought in Teddy Bridgewater. It's why you have Jameis Winston. You can say all you want that you think Taysom Hill can be a starter in this league, but when given the opportunity time and time again to prove it, you keep leaning on other guys. So what am I supposed to believe? It's not that I don't like Taysom Hill, but I don't like the idea of Taysom Hill being my franchise quarterback because he's 31 years old. He was injury-prone in college. And there's been no evidence to suggest he can be a starter. Now, you may throw it back and say, well, there's been no evidence to suggest he can't. While true, I would also much rather go with someone who is less of a risk, especially when you consider the investment you have to make. And I think that's what the Saints are looking at right now. A couple of things from Jeff Ireland in this interview. Again, Jeff Ireland, Saints assistant GM, who was with the Matt Mosley show in the Waco area on Monday. Talked about the draft where the Saints only came away with 4 draft picks, but said kind of what we figured. They were going for quality here.
look, we had a philosophy going into the draft that, we needed quality over quantity. Look, it's the benefit of having a pretty good roster, a veteran roster, and good depth. We felt like the path to our roster was going to be more quality-based. And then with the pandemic going on and virtually no off-season program, no OTAs, no rookie mini camps, we just felt like we needed to really hone in on exactly who we needed to be, who we needed to draft, come in and make our team and potentially start. And so it was a little bit more need-based, but certainly went after some targeted players that we felt could come in here, learn fast, and make a contribution right away.
Again, Jeff Ireland on the Matt Mosley Show. Quality over quantity, which makes a lot of sense. And truthfully, we're going to talk a little bit about this later on as well, but where do you have where do you have roster spots? If the Saints had drafted 7, 8, 10 players in this draft, where are the roster spots? I mean, I could legitimately look at cornerback and say, okay, they need another guy there. And receiver, I could look at that roster and say, I'm certain that Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are going to be on this roster. Pretty sure Traquan Smith is going to make it as well. You can count Deontay Harris, but realistically, he's making the team as a returner, not as a receiver. So you need 2 more receiving options. You could always re-sign Ted Ginn. That would be potentially an option, but it's certainly not definitive at this point. And then if you look beyond that, Lil Jordan Humphrey, is it Emmanuel Butler? My point is you got options. Like you have spots available for someone to come in and sign as a as a free agent receiver, or as an undrafted free agent receiver, or had they drafted a receiver. My point is those are the only 2 spots really where you have legitimate reps available on this team. So if you had drafted 7, 10 guys, half your draft class would have been cut. You don't have spots for them. And one more, actually, I'll get into a little bit more of this because he also talked about Ruiz, he talked about Bond, he talked about Troutman. So we'll get into a little more of that later. But the other thing that I wanted to point out as we circle back, just one more final note here on the Jameis Winston deal. And we're waiting on final terms of that deal and a formal announcement from the Saints. But the thing I'll go back to is, if you're against the Winston idea, and I don't know that you're going to get a better endorsement than what you just heard there from Jeff Ireland, and whenever they do make it formal and you hear from Sean Payton, he's going to tell you similar things. And, of course, we now know that Jameis reportedly passed on an opportunity to get more money in Pittsburgh to come to New Orleans, which is a smart thing to do considering what he just saw Teddy Bridgewater do. But I'll ask you again, give me a better option. If you're opposed to the idea of Jameis coming in to be the backup, and you don't have if you're going to keep Taysom Hill in his current role, you have to bring in another quarterback, period. So who's there? I mean, look at the list of free agent quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, 35 years old. Might be done. Cam Newton, 31 years old, likely looking for an opportunity to start somewhere. After that, Drew Stanton, 41-year-old Josh McCown, Trevor Siemian, Mike Glennon, Matt Moore. I mean, what are we talking about here, y'all? Joe Webb, Blake Bortles, Geno Smith, Cody Kessler, Kyle Sloter, Brandon Allen, Matt Sims, Josh Woodrum, Kyle Shermer, Manny Wilkins. Those are the free agent quarterbacks out there. So, what are we talking about? I mean, you're talking about a guy that's got 70 starts under his belt. He's thrown for 5,000 yards. You're telling me you'd rather Brandon Allen or Kyle Sloter or Cody Kessler or Blake Bortles? What, really? Find me a better option. That's what I'll keep saying. If you're opposed to Jameis, find me a better option. You find me a better option, we'll have that conversation.